Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we continue our lessons from the Golden Monk series. Today is lesson number 9, Live to Know, Not to Have, with our speaker, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We have close to 15 members on Zoom and close to 40 members on Facebook. I have Shweka helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana. I'll soon get my PhD.
In lip reading?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait till you finish, till I speak on mute. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jam, for holding court here and giving us an opportunity to come into this space on a regular basis. I know in getting ready for this, I always have a lot of realization that comes from kind of looking at things a little more carefully. One of the statements from the Bhakti literatures says that the book is meant to distinguish reality from illusion for the welfare of all. So in just thinking about that statement, I looked up in my little dictionary on my computer, what is reality? And of course it comes from the word real. And one of the definitions is the state or quality of having existence or substance. Existence that is absolute, self-sufficient. So those are really parallel with the ways that the Bhagavad Gita talks about what is reality. It has actual substance as opposed to those things that are ephemeral. They're always moving on. Just framing what we're going to talk about today a little bit. But before we do, on my Zoom here, I left original sound on because I have a harmonium here with me. Does anybody know what a harmonium is? I just asked it and I just started answering the question. It's like there's a keyboard, but it has a little bellows at the back. Can you hear that? That's why I left on Zoom there's a setting, original sound, and it picks up music and things like that from a distance. Otherwise it goes right into your microphone. Anyway, just for our meditation today, I thought I'd use a little harmonium to get a kind of a nice drone going when we do our single syllable mantra and maybe even our 2-syllable mantras. So, yeah, welcome everybody. I see that Mukharvind is here. We have Radhakripa, Rebecca, I'll talk to you later. Shweka is here. Angie's here. Wisam's here. Pradeep, good to see you, as usual. Kalyan, fantastic. And Subhadra, our steadiest of steady. Debbie Makanchor, all the way from Colorado. Naveen, SN, Anand. Hey, Anand. With you last night. Pratibha, Manish. Mansi, sorry Mansi. Anna, Agupta, Roseanne, SG. Let's see who else. Who am I missing? It's hard when everyone's coming in. Anyway, greetings and thanks for being there. And I understood also that a lot of you are working, so you can't turn on your camera because you might get busted for listening to philosophical stuff when you're supposed to be fixing the world elsewhere. So keep up the good work and keep fixing whatever you have to fix. And thanks for tuning in, even though you can't, turn on your camera. I know you're there. I feel your presence. So before I go into the subject matter, which I'm really looking forward to doing, let's just take a little time to introspect. Because looking in the Bhagavad Gita, In the 5th chapter, there's a simple little verse in which Krishna says that if you're able to find happiness within yourself, and you don't need anything outside yourself, then you're the wealthiest person, because you can be self-sufficient. And everyone can, because ultimately everything that I think that I need and the things that I'm pursuing, which drives me crazy because I'm always running after it, that comes quite naturally in the world. And the more we're able to take an even pace, methodical pace, and doing what we have to do for our bodies and our minds in the world, because we do have to work to some degree, and we do have to take care of ourselves, but we don't have to get overheated about it. We can take the balance of the time and invest it in our own self-realization. And as it turns out, what we are, the self, is the most amazing aspect of us. We are the most amazing aspect. It's more amazing than anything else. So let's take a peek. So just, if you could, and if you feel like it, sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago, and then close your eyes. It's a good time to relax, but keep an alert mind. And as you're sitting like this, you could take the luxury of examining your breath. And just notice that it's the greatest gift that we have physically. It's coming to us and energizing us at every second. And from the time we take our first breath to the time we take our last, it's easy enough to take it for granted. But let's not. Let's take a look and see how luxurious it is to actually breathe. And if you can be situated there in your breath and just notice your inhale and your exhale, or I should say inhalation, exhalation. And bring your mind to a focused, calm state where you're just observing your breath. And one of the ways to do that is to have gratitude for the fact that you can breathe. We don't take it for granted. It becomes a source of gratitude. And you can try counting so you have an even number, like count to 3 on the way in, inhaling, and count to 3 on the way out. And then if you like, you can try exhaling for 3 and then holding before you inhale again for 3, and do the same thing on the inhalation. Inhale and then hold for 3. Try a couple more cycles and just notice how it makes you feel. Maybe it helps you to focus, or it energizes your body and mind. And we'll experiment with the mantra, which also requires breath. So you're combining this kind of meditation by using your vocal cords to make a sound vibration. This is mantra. It's like a seed vibration. And within that seed, by giving your attention to it, then many spiritual benefits will come out. So this first one is Om. It's 1-syllable mantra. And I'll say it along with the drone of the harmonium. And you can repeat use your vocal cords unless you're in the office. 3 times. And now we'll try the 2-syllable mantra Rama 3 times. And now the 3-syllable mantra Gauranga. 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 And now just notice how the vibration has entered into your mental system. And feel centered. You're a conscious entity within the vehicle of the body. You exist right here, right now. Even as the body changes, you're the witness. You never change. You never grow old. Everything's okay. And bring your attention back to your breath. And appreciate that you can always come back into the sound of the mantra at any time. You can regulate your breath, become more aware of your conscious existence. Last chance, take a nice deep breath. And then rub your hands together to get some external sensation. And open your eyes and come back. And welcome back. So, a spiritual practice that includes taking the time to examine oneself is important. There are various ways to do that. Mantra meditation is very powerful. The sound vibration brings in a energy that helps to lift us above the mire of material thought. Mire. I'm looking it up. I like to look things up. Okay, what is a mire? Mire means a verb, caused to be stuck in mud. and cover or spatter with mud, a stretch or swampy or boggy ground. Mired, to be mired in something, to be mired in a difficult situation. So there's a lot of difficult situations, apparently, that come through the mind, but we don't have to sign on to them and say, this is my situation. You can just say it's a situation. Okay, welcome back. And let's look at a few slides because we can get started on some of the teachings of the Golden Monk. And the title of today's discussion is Live to Know, Not to Have. Live to know, not to have. There's a lot I can try to have in the world. I can look for possessing more and more things. But the Golden Monk says, when you do that, you may forget about yourself. And you may forget about knowing yourself and knowing how you're connected to your original source. So JM, let's take a look. Just as a reminder, we have the Success Sadhana program that a lot of people are doing. It's on an app, and there's ways you can track a few practices for body, mind, and spirit every day. And it helps to have that because the mind becomes whimsical and then wants to do whatever it wants to do. But if you have a track you're running on, it helps so that you can elevate yourself by sticking to the process. Okay, so on the first slide, I make this audacious statement that having has nothing to do with being. We are, in fact, the word to be or is or are, all the same thing. In Sanskrit, it's sat, you exist. In fact, the S in sat, it gets transferred over through the process of Proto-Indo-European into the word is. In modern English, the idea that we exist, we are human beings, we be. We're actually there. What is it? We're conscious. So in the process of moving about the world, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how we can get so externally focused that we think we are things. And so in a famous verse, in the second chapter of the Gita, Krishna says these words, Jayato Vishayam Pumsam Sangas Teshu Vijayate. So Jayato means to meditate on something, to look at it with an intention. Like you may have noticed that sometimes you might not notice things, but let's say, as in the picture here, this fellow on the left decided he wanted a yellow car. Looks pretty sporty, that little car. So he started thinking about it, and then he started meditating on that yellow car, and then it became his yellow car. And so this is what the verse says, Jayato, you meditate or you contemplate it, a thing. Vishayam pumsam sangas teshu vijayate. Vijayate means something grows in you. And what is that emerges? It's a sense of connection to it. So we could look from a very high up level and say, actually, I have nothing to do with the car. It's made out of metal. It came out of the ingredients came somewhere out of the earth. And although now it's manifest as a particular kind of car, now it has maybe a designer license plate. Is that what you call those things? When you get your own license plate, customized, has his name on it. I don't know what that guy's name is, Bert. His name's Bert, and now it says Bert 108 on it. So it's like, that's my yellow car. This is everything. But actually, it's just really material ingredients. But this is what's called Sangha. Now he has a connection with it, is his car. Practically, it's him. His car is him. In fact, Infinite loop. In fact, if he's in the car and someone bangs into it, special sound effects today, just to emphasize certain points. So then he'll say, "Yo, you hit me." Have you ever done that? Like somebody hit me. It's like, what do you mean they hit you? Where'd they hit you? It's like, oh, they hit my car. It's like, but that's me because I am my car. This is having. I come into a state of connection, which is called sangha, which means it's part of me. It's now a limb. And I feel it when somebody scratches my car. And that's because I've connected to it consciously. So that's part of having. But we're human beings. We exist separately from the car. In fact, we're non-material. The car is made out of a different kind of element or elements. And we are ones that can objectify them. We're not material. But if I meditate on it long enough, then my consciousness becomes that of having. So the two things are separate. And in the Golden Monk's teachings, he says, learn to see the difference between the two, between having and being. Even when the thing comes and goes, you still exist. And it really has nothing to do with you except for the interim when you say, this is mine. So in the next slide, we talk about identity. Now, this identity, we do have an identity, and we call it ego. Ego just means our sense of identity. So there's the concept the Golden Monk teaches about. We have what's called ahankara, which means a false sense of self or a false ego. That sounds strange. Like, yeah, this is who you say you are, but that's not really who you are. And so when we tie our heart to material things, to the changing world, then we say, this is my world. Who can think of some examples of when I say my blank and identify with certain part of the world, and I say, this is my something? Can light up the chat box, or you can just tell us. 10 points for each right answer. Okay.
Yeah. My house, my country, my body.
Yeah, everyone's really pouring it on here. Okay, so Wisam says, my home. Yeah, that's a big one. This is my home. It's my homestead. People will die for their homestead. Rebecca, yeah, my house, home, country, my body, my parents, my phone, my sports team. Yeah, my choices, my cubicle in the office. Yeah, and my dog, my OJB.
Job, I think.
Oh, okay. OJB, job stands for just over broke. Subhadra said my wave. Yeah, surfers fight over waves all the time. That's my wave. You get out of my way. And job, Rebecca gave us an OJB and also a JOB. Thank you. So yeah, there's an unlimited list. You could keep filling in that blank forever.
Anand says my wife.
My wife, yeah. Well, that's another one too, because when we get into even some of the Stoics from 2,000 years ago, they would actually keep skeletons around. In fact, they have an emblem to remind everyone that actually the bodies that we're looking of, not just our bodies, but the bodies of others, he said, take a closer look. Think of it as a skeleton. Is that really yours? Are you passing on? And then is it yours forever? Yours just for a moment? So my wife, and, especially it seems like in the entertainment industry, people change husbands and wives all the time. These things that says my, and then it changes. So that any kind of material identification, we can claim to be mine. And then that starts to define us. So if someone asks me, who are you? Then there are a number of answers I can give. Let's see if I can fill in a few. Who are you? And I'll say, well, I'm a man. Is that true? Yes and no. I'm only in a man's body right now. And that could change. You can change your body surgically and hormonal treatment. You can change it. A man's body can turn into a woman's body and vice versa. So also, when I leave this body, what happens to that designation? Do I get to keep it? Someone says, who are you? I say, I'm an American. Well, that's a temporary designation. Also, the concept of America, 250 years old, the idea. Hopefully it can hold on for a little longer. We'll see. And those designations can change. I could say, well, I think I'm going to move to Ethiopia and become an Ethiopian, and I can change my identity there too. But in the meantime, that's my identity. However, what the golden monk says is, be careful. Try to notice what your real identity is. Because if you start from a false premise, 2 + 2 = 5. Now I go on to do more complex computations. I do some trigonometry, and then I get up into doing the more complicated kinds of math. And then at the end here, how does it look? It looks okay, but it's wrong. Why? Because I started with 2 + 2 = 5. So he said, did the golden monk, that be careful about claiming a false identity. And how did we develop that? It's because we tie our heart up to various material objects, including the body that we're in right now. Say, I have to be my body. And then my everything in relationship with my body, that's who I am. And that's what I'll put down when I'm filling out any form, and I'll identify with it. So do you have a different identity? You're a conscious entity beyond the body. So in the next slide, he says that having blocks knowing. In other words, when I'm absorbed in matter, when that's my preoccupation, we do have to work in the world, obviously, but there's a way to be in it without being connected with it altogether. So in this picture, we see a person who's intensely meditating on a car, and that's unreasonable. That's pretty standard. When somebody gets attached to a car, then he or she thinks about it a lot. When I bought my first car years ago, well, I was reading up on how to buy a car. And one of the articles I read said, don't fall in love with the car because the car won't love you back. Boy, isn't that true? So, but people do it all the time. Oh, that car's really you. Oh, I love my car, and so forth. And you get absorbed in car consciousness. But you see on the right, there's somebody who's looking inwardly and finding the Atma, the conscious self that's permanent. Car, source of anxiety. You buy it, and as soon as you drive it on a parking lot, if it's brand new, then you think, oh, how long is this new car smell going to last? And then who's going to be the first one to scratch my car? So it's troublesome to connect to the material nature, but it's not troublesome to connect to our higher self. And when I become absorbed in matter, then my ability to know, to actually perceive myself and then perceive what's reality. And remember, I talked about reality as that which is substantial. That becomes hindered. An example my teacher used to give is that he said, so you meditate, I want to live in a stone house. You know, some of those houses are very beautiful, stones, big, huge stones they're made out of. I'll live in a stone house. And you get in the stone house, and then your consciousness becomes stone-like because of your absorption. Because wherever your tension goes, your energy flows, and then you invest yourself in that. And then with stone-like consciousness, you become dead to your actual conscious self. It's called in Bengali, Jada Buddhi. Jada means like dead and stone-like. And Buddhi means intelligence. So your intelligence becomes encumbered by your connection to matter, and you forget about who you really are, which is a problem. Okay, I'll do 2 more slides and then we'll take some reflections. At least I'll try for it. So the next one talks about Sat. And I mentioned the word Sat. Sat means that which exists. You can point to something and say, it exists. And Sat means it always exists. It's substantial. So that's the distinction made in the wisdom literatures, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. They talk about that which exists always exists. Whereas there are energies that are here today and gone tomorrow. It's not that they don't exist, it's just that they're not substantial. So the material nature made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego, these are all gross and subtle elements. It's here today and gone tomorrow. It's constantly changing. You can't breathe in the same body twice because it's always changing. But you're the same witness that's within the body. That's your Sat existence, your consciousness. So when we become aware of this, then we're known to be in knowledge. This is the definition of knowledge, of knowing the difference between the higher and the lower energies. And in the next slide, this is repeating a similar point, but it bears repeating because this is the bane of our existence. We attach ourselves to things and think of them as synonymous with our lives. So as one of my friends puts it, there's our life and there's our life situation. So you look at this guy and he's meditating on, how's my money doing right now? Is the market up or down? And if it goes down, then he feels a little morose. If it goes up, he feels kind of happy. But after all, it's just numbers on paper. And I mean, it's more than that, but that's what it is if you really look at it from a higher up position. And then he thinks about, am I going to be the hero? Am I going to win? And then he thinks about, are people going to admire me and so forth? He has all these ideas going on about his life situation. And in that absorption, this is called external absorption, then we become more and more impervious to actual knowledge of our spiritual self. So the verse I mentioned earlier from Bhagavad Gita continues, Dhyato vishayam pumsam sangas teshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kama krodho pajayate. In fact, the word krodha in Sanskrit means anger. So there's a sense that when I become so absorbed in these material designations, that when they don't move the way I want them to move, anybody have this experience that things didn't go according to your plan? Have you ever had a plan and it didn't work out? Have you had an image of yourself? I think I look like this, and then you get all the right clothes and do whatever, and then someone says, you really look dorky or something like that, and you're like, darn, I thought I was suave or something. Our self-image, and we're so attached to the life situation. So then there's a way in frustration. Krishna says that we become angry because I'm so absorbed in the things that I think I am, my life situation. I'm so connected with them. That becomes my full identity. And when they don't cooperate, then I become angry. And it's a source of disappointment, also anger. Kamat krodho bhajayate. I become more and more attached to them, and then I become angry when it doesn't work out. And then he goes on to say, the next verse after that, then we lose ourselves in that. It's like you get drawn into this whirlpool of concerns about the material world and about your false identity. And then in that whirlpool, then you lose all context. And that's when life becomes unproductive. You're just moving through the world, trying to make adjustments, but you never quite find any happiness. It's elusive. It keeps moving itself to the, perhaps I'll get it in the next try, but we never quite get there. And then the next slide, we don't like death. Sorry to bring up the subject, but here it is. We don't like death because it challenges our sense of being. In fact, I'm going to show the next two slides, this one and in just a second, the other one. We don't like death because it challenges our sense of being. So show the next slide. We don't like losing things because it feels like we are losing ourselves. So because I've identified myself with so many external things, when I lose them, then I feel like I lost myself. And death is when everything, I feel like I'm losing everything. Because what do you mean I'm moving on? What about all my stuff? What about everything I'm identified with? Isn't it? That's me. That's my identity. So it's actually not a real death. It's just the death of my attachments to the various things that I temporarily got absorbed in. And when I move on from them or they move on from me, and death is like a dramatic time at which the aggregate, everything I think I am, everything I think I have, that gets dislodged. And it's extremely, disturbing, to say the least, unless we've taken time to examine our real existence and what is our relationship with things, that we're human beings. What we have is just utilitarian. They're just things to use for a temporary amount of time. You don't check into a hotel overnight and then just order a paint company to come over and start painting the place. I mean, maybe an eccentric billionaire might do that, but this is lunacy. So these are a few thoughts. There's more to come. There's a few more slides after this that'll bring us hopefully to some practical resolution. But am I leaving you hanging here? How are you feeling about all this? Does it make you feel better, worse? Are you resonating with any of it? Is there any point that you heard? Okay, who said yes?
Nirali.
Hey, Nirali, please go ahead. Great.
Yes, I was saying that, when you get something, it's always a pleasure. You're like, hey, it's my good luck. But, when you lose something, you don't like it. Even it's a bad luck. But, even getting hurt or, losing money or losing even a simple thing, it pains for a while.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't claiming it's mine, but when it goes, you realize it was mine, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, you think you are not attached, but when you lose it, you realize you're attached.
That's true, isn't it? You don't know what you got till it's gone, and you do realize the pain of losing something.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nirali. Wisam.
I think the problem is if I have something, I invested a lot on it, and losing it, I feel that I lost the investment that I have in it. And that's why it feels so dear to me, I think.
Yeah. And we do invest a lot in our environment and in our family and in our body. I mean, we how much do we put into the body to maintain it? There's a sense I have to survive. And so I'm always keeping the body fit so I can live in it. And there's also a sense that it should look a certain way. So I have to invest in that also. And that's onerous. And then, of course, all that investment we make in it, it seems like we've thrown it down the drain, basically. That's one of the reasons that the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us some kind of guidance. It says, okay, you've got a body. That's a really good thing. And it's very important, but it's not yours to keep. And so therefore, it says, eat to live, don't live to eat. In other words, keep it healthy for a purpose, not just so that you'll survive, because you won't. But if you keep it healthy and vibrant for a purpose, which is to become self-realized, then that's reasonable, because that's what the body's actually for. Sundar. Thanks, Wisam.
Thank you, Vaish, for the wonderful points. So one question I had was, we understand philosophically, we understand intellectually these concepts, but then to live it, it's another thing. So can you recommend some steps how we can live these principles?
Yes, thanks for asking. Let's go to the next few slides, because that's where it is. I slipped them in at the end. And knowing me, better to show the slides now than to run out the clock. So here we are. These are the lessons the Golden Monk gave, actually how to live in this temporary world without becoming unnaturally attached to it. So he said, think of this present life as a preparation. It's really a springboard to take us to a much higher level. The human life is considered to be a juncture. It's not the be all and end all. It's a portal, if you will, through which we can actually perceive our higher self, our consciousness. We can develop that. And as we've talked many times in this program, when we leave this present body, it's not the end, but the way we've developed our consciousness will determine what is our next destination. Therefore, the Golden Monk said, use the present life to prepare for the next. And he gave a couple of pointers about that. There's a very important word he uses, dhiras. Now, he's quoting here from the Bhagavad Gita, but he does quote from these ancient wisdom literatures. So the Golden Monk walked around the earth 550 years ago, and he quoted from these ancient literatures that were thousands of years old, like the Gita is known to be about 5,000 years old. And so one of the statements, this is in Sanskrit, and it's spelled phonetically here, so I'll just read it like that. Dhiras tatra namuhyati. So dhiras tatra namuhyati means to be bewildered. All these, the symptoms I talked about before of getting so absorbed in matter that I think I am material. This is called muyati, or a kind of bewilderment. And na means not. So na muyati. So what is the dhira? That's what we want to become through spiritual practice. Dhira means somebody who's undisturbed by the changes that take place in the external world, in one's life situation, in one's body, and so forth. And there's two tools that the Golden Monk stressed. There are many more, but I picked these out because they're close enough to us. We can actually practice these every day. One is toleration. When we learn to tolerate without being disturbed, by having a context with that, which I've been trying to build today, the context that, hey, we're not our bodies, we're just passing through. We're here for a higher purpose. We can do that. And when a situation comes up that seems to be intolerable, don't make an ultimatum. This is one thing I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of years. Ultimatums paint you into a corner. And he's like, I'm not going to tolerate. It's like, okay, you're not going to tolerate, then what are you going to do? Toleration is very powerful because it gives you a perspective. The situation moves on, often repairs itself, things change, and you're still there, and you didn't implicate yourself. Toleration is very powerful. Like if you lose a loved one, yes, there's a grieving process. So but you have to tolerate. And let's say you get on the bus, you didn't get the seat you wanted. You can, let's say you get on the plane, that's even worse. You didn't get the seat you wanted and you cause a ruckus and then you get arrested and thrown off. That's very likely these days. and now your life's basically disturbed even more than it had to be. Why not just tolerate? And when things come, okay, do your best to get what you need, but you don't always get what you want. But if you tolerate, you'll see everything falls into place eventually. Even when you do your due diligence, doesn't, but in due course of time, things will even out. So tolerate and watch how the energy moves. And also he stressed humility. Be humble, because when I have a sense that I already know something, then I can't learn from anybody. There's a tendency, because of my stature, because I went to a particular school, because I'm skilled in some science, then I can't learn from somebody else. But a person who's humble is open to see everybody knows something, is better at me at something. And I can actually learn from every person, not only every person, but every situation that I come into in my life. Humility means I'm not the center. I'm a learner. I'm passing through here. And if you're humble, said the golden monk, then you can avail yourself to all the lessons and knowledge that is inherent in every situation and in every soul. Okay, JM, I think some important things came up on the board, perhaps. And Shubha also has something. Shubha, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Vish. This is just an amazing, amazing session, like always. But anyways, my question is, if you were to think of the situation, I'll take a real life example in Ukraine today. And if I was a person living in Ukraine right now, how would what you're saying today translate to my life? Like if you could just maybe take what you're saying a step further and perhaps simplify it for me, what would your advice be to me in a situation like that?
Well, I do know some people in Ukraine who are actually like monks who live there. And perhaps we could hear from them. I'll reach out and see if they're open. I don't know if they can get on a Zoom call or something like that, but perhaps I can make a connection with them and ask them how they're feeling, how they're doing. But I have seen interviews with some of them. In fact, a lot of them are doing what they have to do. Like one of them I know over there, I don't know personally, but I know him through other people. You know, he was inducted into the military, young man, and the news came and interviewed him and said, you know, how you doing? He said, well, I'm going with whatever the situation is here, whatever I have to do. And at the same time, I'm staying conscious, aware of who I am and that the world's moving about me. And he was also volunteering for things to do good for others in that situation. And you get the sense he's in the eye of the storm. He said, yeah, it's a little scary, but at the same time, you can see just from his countenance that he's not that worried. Perhaps if somebody knows where that interview is, we could pull it up for the next time if I can't get a direct connection to them. But I do know people there. In fact, if I dig into it, lots of people that are, practicing spiritual principles, and they're doing quite well, actually. And they're taking advantage of the situation to, as I said, do good for others. And, they go on with whatever they're doing. So there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita I'll read to you that talks about the state of consciousness one touches when one comes to the spiritual level. It's from the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And let's see, it'll take me a second to look it up. I have a database here. How am I doing with the time, JM?
We are good. We have 10 more minutes.
That's a lot. Okay. Oops. Must have spelled something wrong. Thanks for hanging in there with me, everybody. Greatest difficulty. Why is it 0? You know which verse I'm thinking of, somebody? Oh, okay, now I got it. Here it is. This is just a little sample description of somebody who is meditating, actually, and then coming into this awareness of self, as distinguished from the life situation, which could be quite dire, for instance, a war around us, right? Here it is. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. That's much to the point. In fact, when you talked about the war in Ukraine and what it would be like to be there, how would one handle it? Those two words came into my mind, greatest difficulty. It doesn't get much worse than a war. Of course, if we analyze our own situation, we might be surprised if we're a little observant to see that we're in a precarious situation at every minute. Yes, there's peacetime and there's an actuary table that says you should be able to live to about this age if you don't smoke and, you don't do extreme sports or whatever. But, there's no guarantee at any minute. We're really in a tenuous situation. And therefore, it behooves us to come to this stage of consciousness that's being described here. And is it possible? It's our birthright. It's who we are, actually. Why wouldn't we? And that's why spiritual practice is essential. You can't be happy without it. That is a description of what the beginning of happiness looks like. Shubha, did that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, good. I'm so happy.
Yeah, there are a couple of messages. Do you want to cover the 2 more slides and then take them? About 8 minutes left.
Perhaps I should. I should finish the slides. Okay, here we go. So the Golden Monk then gives these very practical points. He says, become situated in your spiritual identity. So it doesn't mean that you quit your job, doesn't mean you give up your car, doesn't mean you can't have a dog. But what it does mean is to be situated in your spiritual identities such that you're observing the world objectively from the point of view of who you really are. And here are some of the points that he brings out. I'm Atma, the consciousness that animates the body. So this is the foundational aspect of spiritual practice, to know that I'm not the body. In fact, I saw yesterday, there was somebody on YouTube who had some kind of biological degree and was showing different parts of a cadaver. And, there was the brain and the liver and so forth. He actually had the real items there and was showing, like, here's where the filtering takes place and here's where the filtered water comes out and so forth. And you can objectify the body so much, you can see, like, that's not me. These are material elements. Who are you? You're the Atma, the conscious self within. And the next is be in service mind. What's the attitude? Of understanding that there's a way of watering the root of my existence. I'm part of the tree. The entire tree is everything, let's just say, as an analogy. And the way that the part of the tree becomes satisfied is by watering the root of the tree. And we do that through service. And that when we give that to our original source, this is bhakti yoga, we find out what is the source of all existence, and we give our attention and our service there, then all the other aspects of our life become nourished naturally. Then thirdly, he says, see the universe and everything in it as paraphernalia for service. So what's all the stuff for? Doesn't mean you can't have. Can have, and everyone has a quota. Some people have more than other things. Some people need more. Some people want more. But if you just become attached to it, then it'll be a weight around your neck. But if you see it as paraphernalia, how can I use this to serve? Then you never touch it. You don't have it like you have it when you think this is mine. I have to protect it. I keep it. You can't protect it. You can't keep it, but you can use it in service. And if you use it for that purpose, then everything you have becomes spiritually electrified and is a source of satisfaction rather than becoming a burden. And then finally, he said, did the golden monk, become free from material complexities by chanting the spiritual mantra. He advocated very strongly that you can elevate your consciousness by bringing in a higher energy, and it comes through this delivery system called mantra. Man means mind, tra means to deliver, and there are sound vibrations that are not material. They're not connected to the material world. This is the theory behind it. So you can apply it yourself and see how it works. The spiritual mantra cleans the mind. It helps us to overcome these false designations so we can objectify the world and actually see our real place in it. And the spiritual mantra gives strength. It's very necessary through, for instance, physical training. If you have some imbalance in your body, your shoulder goes out of whack, you have to go to a physical therapist, and he or she will give you exercises and say, do these, and it will strengthen you in the right way so that you can overcome your difficulties. So in a similar way, whatever kinds of anomalies are there in our lives, in the world naturally, they can be overcome by spiritual strength. And the golden monk said, practice mantra. So I do it every morning, and I can't do without it. I've been doing it for 50 years. And it's one of the first things I do in the day. I organize it around taking time. I like to sit down, actually. I sit on the floor and cross-legged, and then I'll just begin the process of mantra meditation by repeating the mantra and listening to the sound vibration until my mind gets in resonance with the sound. And when it does, there's a sense of connecting to the higher energies that are beyond just earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. You taste it for yourself. And from that experience, all other kinds of knowledge pours into one's consciousness. And this is one of the points that the golden monk made. That if you get good at mantra meditation, it becomes a mainstay in your life, then you'll naturally have two things. They come to you free of charge, just like the undercoating when you get a new car. You get knowledge and detachment. Knowledge is called gyan, and detachment is called vairagya. And those things naturally come to you, which are rare commodities. You don't get those very easily in this world, but it comes through the delivery system of the mantra. So there's a couple ways to do the mantra. One way is by meditation, like sitting and saying the mantra over and over, listening to it carefully, and then you can sing it also. Of course, it's more fun to sing with other people. I'm going to a festival soon where there'll be, I don't know how many people, hundreds, thousands maybe, and we'll be experimenting with the mantra with a lot of people chanting it at the same time, and there'll be some instruments and things like that. And when you can get into that environment also, you'll notice the power of the mantra. You get into a spiritual bubble that you don't want to come out of. JM, I left 2 minutes on the table. Any other points? Anybody else like to say something? Like, what are you taking away, or any realization you had from the talk today?
You can type in chat box or unmute yourself and share your questions, realizations.
I just a few points that I liked from today's discussion, Vaish, is I like the point about tolerance. And of course, we have heard, at least I've heard that term multiple times, but something that I would like to apply and practice is tolerance. And the other point I liked was creating a resonance between the mind and the mantra. So thank you for that.
Yes. In fact, my teacher once said that sit down and chant and listen until you become one-minded with the mantra. Your mind's not going all over the place. It's just like, oh, this is where I want to be. The mind gets satisfied like that. And tolerance seems like, well, I should do something about this. But then the opposite is there, like, no, just tolerate it. And it's amazing how, if I don't touch it, the situation doesn't get exacerbated. And I noticed that the world's moving on its own accord. Maybe I told you this before, but I think it's applicable here. There's a place sometimes I retreat to up in Northern California called Fort Bragg. They have a botanical garden that my wife and I like to go to. And in it, there's a little stream that goes through. And it has a bridge, a wooden bridge, a small wooden bridge. You can walk over it in 10 seconds. And on the railing of the bridge, there's a little placard that the owners of the botanical garden had put up, and it says, no coins necessary to operate creek. They're trying to encourage people not to throw things in the beautiful creek, like especially coins. But I love the way they put it, no coins necessary to operate creek. And when we come into this state of awareness of we're the consciousness within the body, we start to notice that we don't really need coins to operate the material world. It's going on of its own accord. You can watch and see. If you tolerate things, you'll notice that everything evens out in the end. All kinds of situations. You don't have to jump into the 24-hour news cycle and try to solve it all. You can't, for one thing. But if you tolerate it, and I'm not saying don't stand up for a good cause and don't try to fight for justice when it's available, but I am saying that there's so many injustices and things like that. You can't handle them all. But ultimately, the material world has a way of working that out. It's called karma. And so everyone gets what they deserve. And if you become more of an observer and become more tolerant, then you'll notice that. And you'll see, like, wow, there's a higher order in the world. So many philosophers have done that, Walden Pond, Thoreau, Emerson. They just take time to go and look and see, like, wow, the world's amazingly organized. I don't have to become so disturbed by it. I just have to realize my place in it. Well, everybody, it's been a real pleasure to be here with you today. We took an hour out of our time, and I'm deeply grateful for you for being here and just opening up your hearts and your consciousness to the teachings of the Golden Monk. And I'll just play one little tune before we leave. I have to turn back on my original sound so it'll pick up. Because I have this new harmonium, I can't help but play it. Can I play you all a little tune? You want a happy tune or a sad tune? Write in the chat box and we'll vote. The first 5 votes get counted. Happy 1, happy 2. Okay, happy it is. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There's a happy tune for you for the rest of the day. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in for the Lessons of the Golden Monk. And when I was in India last, which was a couple of months ago, we passed through the Himalayas on our way back from Vrindavan and Delhi, just to verify. And yes, it's true. There are yogis who live in caves, and they come out every once in a while to get some fruits and roots. And when they stand on the high peaks of the Himalayas, sometimes they see other yogis and they become so joyful, they hold their arms high in the air and they say this phrase, which means keep the transcendental vibration going, just to encourage one another. And it goes, Hari Bol. So we can try it. Hari Bol!
Ball.
Hari Bol!
Haribol.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Haribol.